Okay. Good afternoon and good evening to all Gothenburg and friends on webinar. As just introduced by Aarti, my name is Gagandeep Singh and I am the Managing Director of AstraZeneca in India. Today, I welcome you to the India-Sweden Healthcare Innovation Center Summit. And as the video clearly depicted, today's challenge remains on bringing critical stakeholders together on one mission of a patient-centered and fully integrated healthcare ecosystem. Moving away from the fragmented picture that we regularly see with our healthcare system, moving the conversation and the needle from a volume-based healthcare system to a value-based healthcare system. And I think the India-Sweden Healthcare Innovation Center plays a very, very vital and a critical role in moving this conversation to an integrated, innovative technologies which impact the patient pathway. These patient pathways help deliver, and these interventions help deliver, far higher value for patients than it would be in a fragmented healthcare system, and reduce the burden on the healthcare system, which is hugely burdened, and we saw during the wave 2 of our COVID that the pressure on the healthcare ecosystem in India. The whole Sweden Innovation Center is built on the quadruple helix model of innovation that refers to interactions between academia, industry, government, and civil society to nurture innovation and deliver on new ways of working. With that, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome my esteemed panelists who is going to support me in really taking forward this conversation. And let me begin by introducing, on my right is Dr. Puneet Pareek, who is the additional professor at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Jodhpur. Dr. Pareek is very passionate about technology while he comes with medical background, but believes that technology can help achieve a lot in the space of medicine. On my left is Sanjeev Malhotra, the CEO and Center of Excellence for IoT and AI NASSCOM. Sanjeev needs no introduction in India, but for my Gothenburg colleagues, I can tell you, Sanjeev brings wealth of experience of having worked in the Valley and now is at the forefront of setting up the healthcare ecosystem, startup ecosystem in India, as well as in the manufacturing space. We've also joined by Prashant Warier, someone who's very inspiring and a founder of Qure.ai and very passionate about delivering healthcare at an accessible and an affordable cost. Welcome, Prashant. And on my left is Mudit, Dandwate, founder and CEO Dozee. I don't think I've in flesh and blood met someone who's given to the country so much at such a young age for what he's delivered during the COVID wave 2. So Mudit, very happy to have you as part of the panel today. And lastly, we've got Cecilia joining us from Gothenburg. Cecilia is the Trade Commissioner of Sweden to India. She's also someone who's been instrumental in setting up the business office of Sweden in India. And she's a globetrotter who's lived and stayed with over 5 different countries. So welcome everyone to this interesting panel. Maybe Cecilia, can I come over to you up in Gothenburg and talk about that Business Sweden has been a key catalyst for this entire innovation center, which started from 2019, which is entirely from conceptualization to its implementation. What are your views? And we'd love to hear on the accomplishments so far that you've noticed, as well as the broader vision to strengthen the same.
Yes, thank you, Gagan, and thank you very much, first of all 5 of you being up so late in India. I appreciate that very much, and I wish you were here with me, though, in the sofa in Gothenburg. But just seeing the video we saw in the beginning made me extremely proud to what we have accomplished during the past 2 years, from conceptualizing to the current status. It's been interesting to do this during the pandemic, but it hadn't been possible without tremendous support from our key players. Everything from AIIMS Delhi to AIIMS Jodhpur, Minister of Health and Family Welfare in India, but also the Minister of Health and Social Justice in Sweden. And of course, our knowledge partner, AstraZeneca, that despite the pandemic has supported us and supported each other to make this happen. What we have seen is all three of our main key pillars that we talked about in the video, the Center of Excellence, where we support a more holistic view of patient care, which has now been treating more than 300 patients. But also connecting to the previous panel discussion where we support and scale up startups. We have two persons available here in the panel today that I'm sure we will hear more about that. We also have the skilling program for nurses up and running. And what we can see is that those pillars have started to actually work jointly, and we see collaboration, which is great. So what we would like to do is really help the Indian government to achieve affordable and accessible healthcare for everyone. We are also happy to see that this model has been called the best-in-class model for cross-country collaboration in multiple meetings, and that of course we're extremely proud of. I think I'll stop there, otherwise I could go on for the whole 45 minutes and talk about how proud I am of this.
Thank you, Cecilia, but that was really inspiring. Maybe with that, Sanjeev, if I can come over and talk to you about the importance of co-creation and working across borders to find solutions, and particularly trying to solve the challenges that we have in healthcare. And given the light of the fact that the situation we've had in the past 1.5 years, what do you think are the key transformations that you've witnessed?
Thank you. Thank you, Gagan. Thank you, India, Sweden Innovation Center. I think it's been a pleasure to be part of this initiative with the objectives that Cecilia talked about, changing the public health and bringing more innovation into health sector in general. I lead the innovation program, working with different corporates, part of the industry body called NASSCOM. And in the past 1.5 years, while healthcare has always been a focus, the amount of importance that we saw in healthcare in the last 2 years, I think, has been unparalleled in the history, And what we saw in the last 2 years was the importance of digital. Some of us were actually forced by the situation into it. The acceptance of digital in the medical world was accelerated, and the healthcare professionals were more willing to try out solutions and innovations which would take us much longer earlier to convince someone. The speed of innovation in the country has accelerated, and thanks to the efforts, from various companies who have been putting a lot of importance on the innovation, people who have been asking for contactless technology. We have seen that, some of the largest companies of the world in the medtech world have said that, we want to move towards contactless technologies. And where are the solutions where we can adopt some of that in our products? And of course, remote patient care has been a big thing where we have seen demand coming from the healthcare providers, from the medtech companies, pharma companies, and so on. So these are some of the biggest trends that we have seen so far. And of course, bringing corporates and startups together, bring the importance of co-creation. I cannot emphasize more how it speeds up the whole journey. The knowledge that brought in by the corporates is invaluable for speeding up this journey. So these are some of the key points and observations that we had in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I think You really emphasized on the speed of innovation, but I'll also take your point on contactless, technology. And today we're going to hear an example later in the panel of one of the innovations which is based on contactless technology. Sanjeev, you've also been at the forefront of really, delivering on the health as well as overall ecosystem of development with startups. How do you think the catalyst, catalyst system can play a role in building it further?
So I think, first of all, they've done a wonderful job. This program has done a wonderful job in bringing global innovators and adopters together. We have seen examples of international companies coming together, international users coming together as a part of this program. And one of that thing we saw in China as a part of AstraZeneca iCampus initiative in China, a fabulous program, I think, that you have started there with the local authorities. And we witnessed a lot of innovations and how they bring in innovations into the public healthcare system, or into practice. So a lot of learnings we did from that, which we can adopt in India. And a lot of our startups in India got opportunity through that program to be part of the program in China. And we have also, seen these journey of the startups. Definitely, these days a lot of solutions are global, and a lot of international companies have presence in India. So I believe this is definitely going to world is becoming more integrated, and I think it's time that these programs like this, which is definitely helping bringing together innovations from outside here and here to outside as well. So these are some of the key things that I believe is going to be very useful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, and especially given the fact that international collaboration as well as partnerships across the globe can genuinely help in transfer of knowledge as well as capabilities, and which can in turn help in solving problems across the world and bring in solutions which have far wider application than they're being very specific to a certain ecosystem. Thank you, Sanjeev, for those points. Dr. Puneet, it's lovely to have you on the panel today, and I know it's really late in the night, but I've always been excited to ask that with the oncology COE coming up in AIIMS Jodhpur, which all of us have been very, very closely watching, but you've been part of the journey now. How do you think the patient-centric solutions are coming up with AIIMS?
So, right from start, first I will convey wishes and regards from my director, whom I'm representing, Dr. Sanjeev Mishra, to Cecilia and Gagandeep. So, wishes from Dr. Sanjeev Mishra and whole my oncology team and my patients. And I was listening to the great integration of digital AI and all the technologies for that matter. And I was just reflecting in my mind that suffering is a great unifier. So all across the globe, something we can all share is suffering. And okay, so coming to the points about this COE, so Center of Excellence. So when we had a brainstorming and initial discussions about creating the Center of Excellence, what does excellence means? We had a discussion, discussion. Does adding only few counselors means we will become an excellence center? No. So what we rapidly decided is, as a phase one, we should implement whatever we know, and we should create a system or a pathway so that the innovation center or any other partner or any other domain person wants to contribute to oncology. At least they have a pathway and a platform which they can observe. They can learn about this domain, get immersed, and ultimately long-term contribute to its progress. So with that aim, immediately what we have started as a phase one is that we have enrolled few counselors who are counseling nutrition, clinical psychology, addressing the physical therapy, which was not initially present. We had pillars of surgeons, we have pillars of radiation equipment, and pillars of chemotherapy and systemic care and nursing available in the institute. This was immediately lacking, and we immediately fulfilled this need as a phase 1 to build confidence. And we know that phase 2 has to be further evidence-based medicine, further capturing of clean and good amount of de-annotated data so that NASSCOM and all the team members can contribute into that. And next will be reaching outreach, social outreach, that is going for prevention, going for screening. And last will be the tricky portion to deal is reducing the number of causative factors, tobacco and environmental pollution. So that I will be requiring much more bigger team to fight with. So this platform, I think, will in future will also be group to fight for such agendas. So any specific question, I will be happy to answer.
But thank you so very much for sharing this. But it's really inspiring to see that patients are today getting support across nutrition, psychological support as well, and some of this we know in our own, particularly in public healthcare system, have been really
yes, yeah. So definitely, like to further clarify that, in a government setup where we have 100 to 200 patients rushing in, many times the limiting factor is the number of clinicians who are doing. Now, they are not only the clinicians who are doing the workup and examining the patients, they have to carry out procedures. For example, a surgeon today is having his outdoor patient department, tomorrow is in an operation theater. But the patients many times are left with many problems left unanswered. Traveling, where to stay, what to eat, what will happen to them, how bad is the disease, how to arrange for finances, though not very much limiting factor because much is funded in our institute from the union government. Ours is not a totally charging institute. So, but these questions need to be clarified. And then there is fear of death, which is not unique for them. It is shared by us all. So somebody needs to sit and hold their hand, listen to them, explain to them regionally from where they have come, what they can eat, higher proteins or whatever. How can they do that? Extra time is needed from counselors other than clinicians, so that clinician can go and do a surgery, clinician can do and administer radiation, while the counselors take care of that. That part is lacking in Indian health system as of. But it is like an evolution. It has to come, but before that comes, the core departments always come in wherever the country evolves. So we are actually into next, I think the COE is actually evolutionary model into next step in India, where a public health system also takes care of holistic health, not only the very core and limited factors.
Oh, absolutely. And I think for some of us who've not been associated with India for very long, let me tell you, you're talking about a population of 1.3 billion. And you've got, oncologists in the country, which you can, is about 3,000, 2.5, 3,000 if on the stretch. And I'm saying if I include all the surgeons and everyone.
Yes. For an example, in 2013, besides who is a surgical oncologist, I was the only one who joined next as a radiation oncologist. So we two and two of my residents, we were running OPDs for 50 to 100 patients every day. So each evening we were accelerated and happy with whatever we have done. But that is not sufficient. Whatever more needs to be done, the COE is going to be a platform to achieve that.
Oh, absolutely. And therefore, I believe the India-Sweden Healthcare Information Innovation Center can play a very critical role, and especially right across the spectrum, whether it's from diagnostics to treatment to counseling and hand-holding, and these solutions can then be applied and help in physicians really achieving their objectives. And, and it's a good segue to come to you, Prashant. But before everything else, many congratulations on being part of the 14 startups at India-Sweden Healthcare Challenge 2020. So it'll be nice if you can spare a few minutes to explain us what Qure.ai does, and to my audience in brief. We'll really look forward to that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the kind words, Gagan. And thank you for inviting me to speak at this event. So Qure is solving exactly the problem we were talking about, that there are about 10,000 to 12,000 radiologists in the whole country for 1.3 billion people. And this is, if you compare to US, for example, this is probably like 50 to 100 times lower than the number of radiologists per population, per person that they have there. So we are building AI which can automatically interpret radiology images. Let's go through this one. We basically automate X-ray interpretation, CT interpretation. We automate MRI interpretation using AI. So multiple solutions that we have. We focus on 9 disease areas. Today we are across about 50 plus countries. We have trained our technology on a large amount of data, and we process about 200 million images every year. And these are products which require regulatory clearance. So we are FDA cleared, CE certified. We are in about cleared to sell these products in about 60 countries now. And this is, approximately about 500 plus hospitals and radiology centers globally use our technology to interpret scans across about 50 plus countries. And we touch about, I would say, about 4 to 5 million lives on an annual basis. I'll give a few examples of what we do. So the first example is of a TB program in Philippines. So there they have these mobile vans which travel around the country screening people for TB, and these vans have an X-ray system, but they don't have a radiologist on the van. So what happens is the X-ray gets taken, but these vans travel to multiple places and come back to Manila, and then the scans are read to send to a radiologist to read. It takes about 4 to 5 weeks to get an X-ray read, and using our technology, we are able to make that happen within a minute. So something that was like X-ray gets taken on day 1, gets read 5 weeks later, we are able to make that happen in a minute, and that is radically changing how TB diagnostics work in not only in Philippines, but in about 20-25 countries now. Second one is about emergency care, where you've taken a critical, somebody's come in with either trauma or stroke into the hospital. You take a CT scan, a head CT scan, which is very quick. You can take that in a few minutes, but then you have to wait for the radiologist to interpret so that you can provide the appropriate care. And that is where, again, we come in. We are able to provide that. We are able to read that scan within a minute. We send that information, the report and all the different findings on the CT scan to the radiologists and the neurologists, neurosurgeons on their phone, so they can act immediately, even to the emergency physician, so that they can act immediately for that, intervene immediately on that patient. And lastly, what you see is automating reporting for a lot of scans. So where chest X-rays are, there are more than 1 billion chest X-rays taken every year around the world. And what we do is, about 70 to 80% of those X-rays are normal. If you can identify which are those normal X-rays, you can automate the read of a lot of those. And the normal X-rays all have the same report. So what we do is, out of those 100, we are able to call out, maybe let's say, out of 100 X-rays, we are able to call out 60 as normal and 40 as abnormal. And we are able to reduce the workload of the radiologist from reading 100 scans to now reading only 40 scans. And in some places, we have been able to reduce the workload by more than 80%. So that's the automated interpretation part. Coming to what we are doing in oncology, so this is our product for lung cancer. So the X-ray AI product that I spoke about, that can detect whether an X-ray is normal or abnormal. It can detect 30 different abnormalities on the X-ray. And one of the abnormalities that it can detect is a nodule. And additionally to that, we can detect whether the nodule is at risk for lung cancer. Now, how does this work in the oncology workflow? So lung cancer is one such condition where by the time you have symptoms, already too late. And from what I understand, I'm not a physician myself, but the survival rate for late stage lung cancer is about 5%. Early stage lung cancer is about 65%. So by detecting that early, you can actually save the lives of a lot of people. And how do we do that is by looking at X-rays, which are taken for non-oncology reasons. So these are people who have come in with other kinds of symptoms, let's say fever or cough or many other infectious disease kind of symptoms. And they are then, those X-rays are taken. And what you can do is actually you can put Qure solution on top of that, either on the cloud or on premise, which makes sure that if there is a risk of lung cancer, as what you can see on this screen right now, we can identify that risk and we can say that this patient needs to be investigated further using a CT and or a biopsy following that. And that way we can identify lung cancer much earlier than it would have been identified otherwise. And the basic model is that there are this billion plus X-rays that I spoke about that are taken annually around the world. If you could fit this AI solution basically on each of those X-rays that are taken, you could basically identify a lot of lung cancer cases early, and late stage lung cancer diagnosis might come down to zero. So that is the kind of model that we're working towards. So I'll pause there.
No, Prashant, that's really inspiring to see how you're bringing in capacity building along with early diagnosis. I'll also like you to comment on what you think is the value that India-Sweden Healthcare Innovation Center or Catalyst Networks brings to Qure.ai.
So the India-Sweden Innovation Center, we have been working with AIIMS Jodhpur, so we have been connected to AIIMS Jodhpur.
That's how we met. It was because of India-Sweden. Otherwise, Prashant was happy somewhere. I was happy. Okay.
So we are validating a lot of new products through AIIMS Jodhpur. So we have a HCD AI product which is coming up, CT angio product that is coming up. There is a point of care ultrasound product that we are launching pretty soon. So those are getting validated. Those are getting tested at AIIMS Jodhpur. We recently also signed up for a partnership with Dr. Ulf Hedin from Karolinska University, again through the India-Sweden Innovation Center. And that is again where we're looking at a research collaboration on our neuro product portfolio. So what we're seeing is that we are getting introduced to a lot of hospitals, a lot of researchers, and this will enable us to basically, we build out these technologies using data. Right? Data is basically building out the technologies. But once the technology is built out, we need to test it out in the real world. And this partnership, this innovation center will allow us to test that out across various hospitals around the world. That is the value that we get.
Thank you, Prashant. And Mudit, coming over to you. First of all, congratulations on being part of the 2020 Healthcare Challenge and the 14 startups. And like I said, it's been really a great story of what you've contributed with your solution in the most dreaded times that some of us have lived through in the COVID wave too. It'll be inspiring if you can share what Dozee has delivered and what's your vision around Dozee.
Thank you, Gagan, and thanks India-Sweden Innovation Center, AstraZeneca, to actually organize all of this. So quickly getting on to what is Dozee. So Dozee is a technology that converts any bed into a connected health bed. Little bit more. So it's a contactless remote patient monitoring technology. So it consists of 3 parts. One is this thin sheet of sensor that goes under the mattress and without even touching the person, collects all of these biomarkers, which forms, typical vitals, which are typically taken in a hospital. And like never seen before globally, right? Entirely making and automating the workload of nurses and critical care segment altogether. And what typically a nurse or doctor would do once in a 3 hours, once in a 4 hour in a ward, this does that 300 times a second. Thereby increasing the frequency, what it also does is the early detection happens, and also the entirely automated part reduces the nurse workload and so on as well. The principle on which this works is called ballistocardiography. Ballisto meaning motion or vibration. Cardiography means study of heart. So it monitors every micro vibration produced in every heartbeat. In fact, it is that sensitive that even individual heart walls also, when they open and close, it captures that as well with medical grade precision. And not just heart, it also does respiration, seizures, tremors, body movements, and all of those parameters as well, right, continuous. And along with that, it then builds up the artificial intelligence piece, which does the trend analysis, and if there is any kind of red flag sign, immediately escalates it to the critical care outreach program and automating that entire workflow. Right? And again, taking care of patients as easy as checking WhatsApp. Right? That's how easy we think that workflows of doctors and nurses should be. And all of this, when implemented in in a high dependency units, it basically saves almost 1 nursing hour per day. It saves, based on the data that we have collected over the last 6 months, almost 30 to 40 timely transfers in high dependency units and step down into facilities, cost saving for patients, and reduced human error, reduced stress on the staff, and so on. Right? So that's the kind of impact that Dozee has. I wanted to just share a few anecdotes, right? So one of the hospitals, which we worked on very closely with during wave 2 was Iggmc Nagpur. And this hospital alone effected more than 800 successful ICU transfers during COVID time. And it was also awarded by the government of India as well for having the best recovery rates in the entire Maharashtra region. And this was a place which was having 5,000 COVID patients every day. right? So, in fact, we also got an opportunity to work with even Indian Army also. They had given us a task of putting a 300 bedded step down ICU within 3 days. And not only we did that, we even helped them run it for during the peak of the COVID times as well. So that's where we got compliments from Dr. Madhuri Kanetkar. The reason why her doctors were able to sleep was because Dozee was there, because Dozee never sleeps. And now, quickly we have scaled up from what used to be just in about 10 hospitals in Jan, now in more than 150 hospitals across India, in more than 5,300 beds which have been upgraded, right? And touching close to 40,000 patients and saving about 100,000 nursing hours, working with the top brands, as well as public hospital settings as well. In fact, we had launched an initiative called Million ICU, and the vision of that initiative is that every public hospital bed should have a continuous connected care like an ICU, right? And again, without even causing patient to wear anything. That is also important, right? We don't even think that, every patient should be hooked up to wires, electrodes and cuffs. Without touching, we can give just that kind of a care. And now, we are even taking this beyond hospital premises as well, taking it to home and working with cardiac, geriatric, sleep disorders, and entirely bringing the continuum of care to the place as well. So when the patient is discharged and at home, even there as well, their care continues, right? That's the whole idea. So I think that's what Dozee does, and that's what we are looking to do: change the world for better and ensure that health is accessible, affordable, as we had spoken in the vision statement.
Awesome. So how do you think, given your whole vision, the role of India-Sweden Healthcare Innovation Center or a Catalyst network in helping achieve that?
So, as even Prashant also mentioned, a lot of work that we do, right, is based on data, but finally we need, clinicians' help and also help from industry to quickly validate this and put this out in the market. And that's where we are working very closely with AIIMS Jodhpur. Dr. Devra is so next generation of algorithms, right? So we are working on heart failure, right? So as I mentioned, right now we are doing contactless vitals tracking, right? And that is almost a tip of the iceberg of what we are doing. Our vision is that, apnea measurement should be also contactless. Heart failure, right, measurement should be contactless. Blood pressure measurement that we have already rolled out also should be contactless, right? And that is something that we are working with. So AIIMS Jodhpur is leading that effort, but we are also replicating that under their leadership in 6 other AIIMS as well. Right, so that is very critical in the way it has panned out. And also, India-Sweden Innovation Center and this entire program has also helped us get an exposure for international expansion as well, that we will be starting post our FDA approval as well, which we are expecting very soon as well. So it has been very helpful for us. And yeah, looking forward to working even more.
Thanks, Mudit, and wish you all the very best. I guess everything's going to be contactless except, being in contact with your physician as we move forward, which is really important. So I come towards my right, which is, Dr. Puneet as well as Prashant. Very brief response. We're really closing out on time on the future of health look like and how our patient experiences, in your view, going to change as we move forward. Anyone?
All the technology. So I will, Prashant.
Go ahead.
So quickly, I will say that, like Mudit has done. First of all, this gap between clinicians and technology is going to be shortened. So, like AI and mathematicians, they were secluded for too long to develop their algorithms, and now they are back contributing in the world. And we see that all the clinicians will be using augmented AI, what I'd say, to faster do and augment their work of healing. So that will definitely happen. And future generation is going to laugh that people used to consume tobacco. That's what I want to do. I want people to make fun of us. By God, these people were using tobacco? Were they so cool?
So, my perspective, I think technologies will allow us to get healthcare to every person in their homes, closer to home. like what Dozee is doing, where, I mean, a lot of things can be diagnosed at home. You don't have to go to a doctor for something. A lot of healthcare will be proactive than reactive. I mean, today, I mean, back in the day, you used to go to a mechanic when something went wrong with your car. Now Tesla is able to figure out that your car is going to fail even before it fails, right? So I think something like that is what we will see in healthcare also in the next 10 to 15 years, where a lot of diagnostics will be proactive than reactive.
Thank you. And we all need that. We've recently had cases like Puneet, Rajkumar and others, which could have been prevented if only we knew what's going to happen. Maybe Sanjeev and Mudit, my technology partners, what do you think are going to be the technologies which are going to drive these future trends? We were to look to the crystal ball first.
So, a lot of these technologies, which are the sensor-based technologies, which where you can actually monitor and the vitals and some of the signs that patient may show, and there's nobody person to see that. So I think sensor technologies of that kind, and the cost of these things is coming down, and AI, where the communication technologies, the data can be transmitted to the right place. There are algorithms to monitor it. So I think these are some of the technologies which are the cost of these things come down, they becomes affordable, they become pervasive, is going to make a big difference in wider adoption and hence bring about the things that Dr. Puneet and Prashant were talking about.
So I think, I agree with him. So a lot of things. So I think the healthcare so far has been very symptom-based. Treatment have been, has happened. In the future is going to be a very biomarker-based, right? We are not going to wait for something to happen, as in with what even Qure.ai is doing, proactively working and so on. And just asking ourselves a very fundamental questions, right? I think that will change the entire paradigm. If I'm sitting on this chair, why this chair doesn't know my health, right? You have to ask that kind of question. As in, I ask this question, as in I sleep on my bed for 8 hours. Why doesn't know my health? It should, and that's what led to creation of Dozee. I think such things we need to ask, and that's it.
Fabulous. Yeah. Cecilia, you've just heard every one of us out here in Bangalore talk about what we think about the future and the innovation. What's your vision ahead for the center?
Well, thank you, Gagan, for asking me. Well, I think it's quite obvious today that, first of all, we have reached significant progress in this program, but there is still a long way to go. Our mission and vision, we have reached part of it, but we still have something to do. And for instance, we would like to work closer with the Indian government in order to make this more sustainable, but also get the maximum impact. Other than that, something you, Gagan, touched upon before, we would like to connect more Swedish, but also Indian academia to this, also more companies, in order to really strengthen the triple helix model of this program. And lastly, I would say I would like this platform to be known as the platform for innovation in healthcare, both in India but also in Sweden, because I really believe we're taking the right steps now. And before we conclude, Gagan, may I ask you, how do you look upon this journey so far? And what are the key accomplishments, and how do you see the future?
I think, thank you, Cecilia, for that question. I feel very energized today evening, even though it's almost close to midnight here. And that's largely the state of the mind when you're around the India Sweden Healthcare Innovation Center, because you're looking at innovations, you're looking at partnerships, bringing in the academia as well as innovators together, creating a platform, seeing the energy which Business Sweden has, given the gravitas which NASSCOM brings or Ministry of Family Health Welfare brings. It's all in all creating a great, a platform for delivering some outstanding innovations, innovations. I mean, it's a great start, and we'll all, probably in our careers, when we look back in a few years, we'll remember that, how we went ahead and created from a concept to something which is actually today like a lab. And hopefully some of the lab work that we're doing today will tomorrow become protocols of, treatment and the changes that it will bring across the landscape. What we didn't touch upon, was also around the capacity building, which is again happening, led by Dr. Puneet, led by AIIMS Jodhpur, how we try to build, capacity around the nursing staff, around the paramedics, around the physicians, which will again, I'm really inspired by the fact that what something like that can deliver. Because remember, in India, we're always short on hand to our healthcare, and the more we invest in training, the the dividend is just unlimited there, and that's what I think the capacity building will bring in. And eventually, I'm conscious from a time perspective. I like to borrow where Dr. Puneet started. He said that suffering is a great unifier, and I just build on that. If suffering is a great unifier, so should then innovation and treatment be borderless. And that brings me to a common word between Sweden and India, which is Samban. And I just hope and pray that this Samban gets stronger and stronger and delivers for the patients across the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. I'd like the audience to give you a really strong round of applause.